Is this a great game or what? With the Hall of Famer Tim Kurkjian. I am his son, Jeff Kurkjian, and Dad, we got to start by thanking Tom Glavine was so good on the podcast yesterday. If you missed it, you got to make sure to go back because we not only talked baseball, of course, we talked hockey. We did it all.
We talked golf. Tom Glavine, Hall of Famer in every way. Thanks for joining us. Add to the list of Hall of Famers we've had on the show, Jeff.
Yeah, that's right. And Dad, for anybody who's watching, they might notice my backdrop. And where am I? I'm not at home. I'm on the road. I'm actually in Dallas, Texas right now, Frisco to be exact. And I'm here for the Academy of Country Music Awards this week.
That's great. Now, did I understand correctly that you went to Billy Bob's last night?
The world's largest honky tonk. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, I have never been there, and I lived in Dallas for almost 10 years. Never been there. Did you ride a mechanical bull, yes or no?
Okay, so I had texted our family group text, and I told both you and Mom, I said, hey, I'm at Billy Bob's, thinking that maybe one or both of you had actually been because you both lived here for quite some time. My sister and I were born here in Dallas, didn't stay long after we were born, but and Mom immediately said, ride the mechanical bull, which immediately made me think I probably shouldn't, because at a honky-tonk like this, and I am working, I'm a country music morning show host, and I was with radio people from across the country, I felt as if maybe wasn't my place to ride the bull. But that got me thinking, Dad, have you ever been on a mechanical bull?
Who do you think you're talking to here, Jeff? Of course I haven't. I would never do that. I get dizzy on a merry-go-round with Carson. So no mechanical bull for me, although I did cover the rodeo one night in Dallas in January of 1982, working for the Dallas Morning News. I covered a rodeo like I actually knew what I was doing, which of course I didn't. And one of the rodeo riders' name was Charlie Sampson. I'll never forget. He was a little guy. He was like my height, and he was amazing on this bull. So he looks at me after the interview. Jeff, I'm 24 years old at the time. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care how self-serving this sounds. I'm in the best shape of my entire life. I've never been more athletic in my life than I was at 24. So Charlie Sampson looks at me and he goes, you'd be a good bull rider. You're really small. He goes, you just got to get yourself in shape, and then maybe you could ride a bull. Charlie, please, I'm in the best shape of my life, and you can ride a bull, and I'm not going to, because I would never do that.
Well, clearly, I guess rodeo cowboy shape and sports writer shape and pickup basketball player shape are two very different things, I assume.
Right. But I did have a great time. Your mom and I lived in Texas for parts of 10 years, Jeff, and they were great. I'll never forget my first day at the Dallas Morning News. This was December of 1981. I had just turned 24 years old, and I'm like 3 feet tall. I look like I'm 14. So I walk in the Dallas Morning News newsroom. This is my job. It's a major, great newspaper. And I'm greeted, the first person I see when I walk in the sports department was Harless Wade, who I, of course, had no idea who he was. I learned that he was one of the great Texas sports writers. What a perfect name for a Texas sports writer, Harless Wade. So
Perfect.
I walk in, he stops me dead in my tracks. Again, I've been in the newsroom for 5 steps now, and he looks at me with that quizzical look on his face. He goes, you must be the new guy. And I said, yes. He goes, you are the smallest goddamn Yankee I've ever seen in my life. There I am, 5 steps into the newsroom. And he's trashing my height, which is necessary. But where I'm from, smallest goddamn Yankee I've ever seen. So I said, Harless, it's nice to meet you. I ended up having a great relationship with him and with the city of Dallas. I really enjoyed our time there.
So I'm covering the Academy of Country Music Awards, Dad. So after I get off with you, I'm going to be interviewing so many country music artists. Yesterday, I had a chance to do that as well. Last night at Billy Bob's, I saw Jelly Roll, Lainey Wilson, Drew Baldridge, Ernest, like all of these great country stars. When you moved to Dallas, though, they asked you one question about who the greatest country singer of all time is, right?
Well, Randy Galloway, one of my mentors, said, "Who's the greatest country singer of all time?" Of course, I don't know any of them, so I say Kenny Rogers, like the gambler. I didn't know what else to say, and Randy Galloway yells at me, he goes, "Timmy boy, if you're going to live in the state, you got to understand one thing. There's only one great country star, and that's Willie Nelson. Don't ever forget that." So Willie Nelson is the greatest country star of all time because Randy Galloway told me he was.
Well, and at Billy Bob's last night, I saw Willie Nelson's handprints on the wall because each performer who sells it out does handprints into like concrete kind of thing, and then they get a slab and they put it up on the wall. And then I saw his signature as well. It was an amazing experience, and I wanted to show you something. Can you give me 1 sec? I think you'll like this.
Yes. Oh, Jeff.
Hopefully this doesn't bring back any bad memories. I just put on a cowboy hat.
Yeah.
A black cowboy hat that, went in Texas, right?
Jeff, you look good in a cowboy hat. Remember, for our wedding, which you were not there for, thank goodness, we gave our groomsmen cowboy hats as presents. So at the rehearsal dinner, everyone was wearing a cowboy hat. And I can say this without hesitation, Jeff, no one, and I mean no one, looks worse in a cowboy hat than me. In fact, soon after we got married, Mom took me to one of these country western places and bought me some tight jeans, which looked ridiculous, boots, a belt buckle the size of a frozen pizza, a string tie, and a cowboy hat. And she told me how great I looked in that. And I am so short, and the boots are so big, and the hat was so big, and the belt buckle. I look like you just put a hat on top of a belt buckle on top of shoes. Like you couldn't even see me. I looked so bad. It was so awful. But so I was not. I was not born to live in Texas, but I repeat, I had a tremendous time living there.
Well, in spirit of, and this is the last thing I'll make you do, in spirit of the Academy of Country Music Awards in Frisco, Texas, can I get a yeehaw by chance?
Yeehaw! That's a good yeehaw. That's a good yeehaw, son. What movie's that from?
That's from City Slickers?
Yes, one of my favorite movies ever. I would have been Billy Crystal in City Slickers if they had cast me in the movie, although he could ride a horse at the end. As we know, I've been on one horse in my life, and that was a complete disaster. I thought we were going 35 miles an hour across that field. As it turns out, we were going 3 miles an hour. I just didn't know how to ride a horse.
We're so glad that we can do this podcast no matter where we are. And I want to jump right into the takeaways on our Thursday edition of Is This a Great Game or What? What do you have?
Well, the AL West, where the Rangers play, is a complete free-for-all. 4 teams can win it, including the Oakland A's, which is quite a story given how terrible they were a couple of years ago and even the beginning of last year. But they have straightened things out. They're a really interesting team. And Jacob Wilson, their shortstop, who we talked about on this podcast multiple times, Jeff, is having an amazing season. He's a rookie. He's hitting .341, 6 walks, 6 strikeouts in 145 plate appearances. That's unbelievable. Now, Jeff, do you know where he went to college? He went to Grand Canyon University, where
that's my wife's alma mater.
Beautiful wife Emily went to school. And he is the son of Jack Wilson, who played shortstop for the Pirates for a bunch of years. I used to love to watch Jack Wilson play. Had this incredible release. He could really throw on the run. And his son is going to be even better than Jack Wilson, which is really saying something.
You know what they say at Grand Canyon University? Lopes up.
Oh, is that what they do?
They're the antelopes.
Oh,
so they're lopes up.
I love those little things, you know.
I know, right?
Rich Donnelly, my dear friend, knows all sorts of people who went to Xavier, and they go like this, XU.
XU.
That is so cool. I would.
You know the amount of times you did that to your son-in-law's brother, Mike?
Yes. Every time I see him, I go like this.
XU.
XU. I love it. All right. So Jacob Wilson also has played in 63 games. He has 3 walk-off RBIs already, including one just the other day. Wow. So just for a little context there, it really doesn't mean that much. But Juan Soto and Corey Seager together have 3 walk-off hits in their career. And Jacob Wilson has 3 in his first 63 games. That's pretty impressive.
That is
All right. The
impressive.
other thing that happened this week that I really enjoyed is that Brett Boone, our friend, we went on his podcast, former Major League second baseman and a really good one. Brett Boone is the new hitting coach for the Texas Rangers. Before we get to Brett, Jeff, I told you at the beginning of the season, the Rangers, I think, are the best team in the American League because they're the best offensive team in the American League. And as of the other day, they were the worst offensive team in the American
Right.
League. Only in baseball can this happen. So Brett Boone takes over as the hitting coach Tuesday night. Of course, they win the first game 6-1. They get a bunch of hits. So maybe there's something there. Brett Boone, Jeff, brings an arrogance to the clubhouse. And, that's a compliment. That's what really good players do. He walks in and he goes, why aren't we hitting? Let's go. And I'm sure things are going to. I remember once, Jeff, he hit a home run in the second deck at Safeco Field in Seattle. And I called him on the phone because I was writing something on him for ESPN, the magazine. So I'm on the phone with him, so I'm not face to face. So I said, Brett, I understand you hit a ball in the second deck yesterday. He screams at me, well, I do that every day in batting practice. If you ever came out here, you would see that like that. And he was being playful, but at the same time, he was trying to make it clear that he goes up there all the time. So this is
Right.
this is great, Jeff. A podcast, and his job before he was the hitting coach was he had his own podcast.
So, are you telling me there's a chance?
Yes, I'm telling you that Eduardo Perez, our dear friend, has told me multiple times he will manage in the big leagues someday if he wants to. Eduardo's had a bunch of opportunities. He said, someday, Tim, I'm going to get a managerial job, he said, and you're going to be my bench coach. And of course, he was kidding. So I said, I'm going to be your bench coach. And Eduardo goes, yeah, you can tell a bunch of funny stories to the players in between innings. That would be my role as the bench coach, is to make the players laugh with a bunch of funny baseball stories in between innings. I did not know that's what bench coaches did.
That sounds more like the team jester or mascot than a bench coach.
I would be much closer to a mascot than the bench coach, for sure. And speaking of the Rangers, Josh Smith played first base Tuesday night for the Rangers. Josh Smith is from LSU. He's a really good player. He can play every position on the field, essentially. Another guy who really throws so well on the run, and he's become a pretty good hitter. So the other Tuesday night, he played first base, his third start ever at first base, and they hit a line drive to him. And again, he's a great defensive player. They hit a line drive to him, and that first baseman's mitt is so big. Because and when you're a shortstop third baseman and now you're playing first base, it's a really uncomfortable feel. He caught it, and then he didn't even realize that it was in his first baseman's mitt. He's looking around for the ball, and he looked at it, and there it was. This just shows you how precise these players are. They're used to having a glove that fits so perfectly on their hand. And now he's wearing a first baseman's mitt, which is like having a tennis racket on your hand instead of a baseball glove. And he didn't even know he caught it. I'll never forget when Nomar Garciaparra, of course, it was a shortstop growing up, moved first base briefly. Occasionally, he would use his fielder's glove at first base instead of a first baseman's mitt because he didn't feel comfortable having that big piece of leather on his hand.
I mean, it is a big change, but I would be more scared to wear that at first base.
Well, he was just comfortable. This is my glove. I'm going to wear it at first base, and he did. And speaking of shortstops, Jeff, I'm dazzled every night when I watch games at the athleticism and the incredible skill, especially by our middle infielders. So through Tuesday, Nick Allen of the Braves had played in 28 games at shortstop, 26 starts, and had not made an error. Jeff, 26 straight games at shortstop without an error. And he's one reason the Braves have made a comeback here, is he has solidified defensively shortstop. Mason Wynn of the Cardinals through Tuesday, 26 games at shortstop, 25 starts, 0 errors. Two guys who have started 25 or more games without an error at shortstop, Jeff. There are a lot of ways you can make an error as a shortstop. And Dansby Swanson, who's so good, 37 games through Tuesday, 37 starts, 1 error. So if anyone doesn't appreciate the skill and the talent of our middle infielders in the big leagues, you need to watch a few more games because those guys are amazing.
All right, Dad, let's jump right into the Quirkjians you have today.
Yeah, so I was looking up a few things Tuesday night, and I found that 4 different teams do not have a home run from a third baseman. And we were to May the 6th. The last time we went back as far as, anywhere with 4 teams not having a home run from the third baseman was in 2007. I called Frank from the Elias, and he confirmed that right away. By the way, I've asked Frank from the Elias to come on and be one of our guests, and he has agreed to do so. That's a good idea, right?
Dad, so many people have messaged us on social media at Great Game or What saying, who is Frank from the Elias and can we meet him?
Right. Well, we are going
to. He's as mysterious as Tim the Toolman's neighbor.
All right. Well, we are going to get Frank on the show soon. But the beauty of this this curious question I asked, the A's, the Rays, the Phillies, and the Cubs through May the 6th did not have going into May 6th did not have a home run for the third baseman. I send this to Frank. And literally 10 seconds later, Alec Boehm, third baseman for the Phillies, hit his first homer of the season. 10 seconds later. So I later messaged Frank, oh, thanks for the information. Alec Boehm just hit a homer 10 seconds after I asked you. And he goes, of course he did. That's how baseball works. That's why it's such a beautiful game.
He knew. Alec Boehm knew that you were talking about him. He said, I don't want to be on that list.
Of course, absolutely. So also Tuesday night, the Giants scored 9 runs. I watched all 9 of them in the 11th inning against the Cubs. So that's it. Wrigley Field has been open since 1914, and that's the most runs scored in any extra inning in the history of the ballpark, which is now 111 years old, Jeff. And don't forget, earlier this year, the Diamondbacks and the Cubs scored 16 runs in the 8th inning, most runs scored by both teams in one inning in the history of Wrigley Field. So here we are now, we're at May the 8th, and 2 things have already happened at Wrigley Field that had never happened there, a ballpark that opened in 1914. That stuff just fascinates me, Jeff. Am I wrong?
No, I think it's historic. Those of Fenway Park, right? Those of old Yankee Stadium, when things happen there that have never happened before, which we shouldn't be saying anymore, by the way, because the game's been around for 1 billion years and you've been here for most of them. It really does fascinate me.
It does. A lot of things fascinate me. So Tyler Stevenson, catcher for the Reds, struck out 5 times the other night, Jeff. And you know how interested I am in high strikeout totals, not to make fun of people, just to show people how difficult it is to hit in today's game. So this is the 5th time this season that someone has struck out 5 times in a game. So the record for individual 5 strikeout games before June is 7 done in 2023 and 6 times in 2019. I have a good feeling by the time we get to June, we're going to have 8 players who have struck out 5 or more times in a game. And I repeat, Jeff, again, different time, different era, but Bill Buckner, one of the most underrated players ever, and Mike Scioscia never struck out 3 times in a game. And They were accomplished major leaguers. And we have 5 guys this year who have struck out 5 times in a game.
You know, Dad, I found on social media, so we're going to get to From Ozzy to Oral a little bit later in the show today. You're going to give us the best number 13 and the best number 14 of all time. But on social media, and I wanted to just slide this into the Quirkjians to see if you knew this. Did you know who shares a birthday with Stan Musial?
Well, yes, Keith Hernandez has the same. No, Keith Hernandez has the same birthday as Mickey Mantle. No, I don't know. Who shares a birthday with Stan Musial?
Ken Griffey Jr.
Oh, they're both from Denora, Pennsylvania, right?
And they're both born in the same town in Pennsylvania.
And they're 2 of the greatest hitters of all time. That is so. I knew.
The only reason why I brought that up is because we had somebody on social media said, I'm not sure if this is a Quirkjian, but I wanted to share it with you guys. And I thought it was so cool because not only are they born on the same day, obviously like 49 years apart, but they're also from the same town, which is just crazy.
Right. And two of the greatest baseball players of all time. Last thing, Jeff, we did not have a player named Caleb to play in the major leagues. Unusual first name until 2014 when Caleb Joseph made his major league debut for the Orioles. Caleb Joseph, by the way, Jeff, was the catcher in the game in 2015 in which there were no fans allowed in the stands because of the rioting in Baltimore, so they had to keep everyone safe. So they played a major league game with no fans in the stands, and I covered that game. And Caleb Joseph was the catcher. He's wicked smart. He is really funny. And we're going to get him on the podcast one of these days because he's that good. So he told me after the game just how odd it was, how quiet it was in the ballpark because there were no fans there. So he says, I'm catching in the game and I can hear the announcements in the press box, like attention press.
Wow.
That was Chris Davis's first home run since whatever, since April the 4th or whatever it was. And Caleb Joseph told me he's behind the plate in a major league game and he can hear the announcements and he's saying to himself, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. He's catching a big league game and he can hear the public address announcer. Buck Showalter in that game, by the way, told me that he said we didn't even need the bullpen phone to call down to get a reliever up. I just stepped outside of the dugout and yelled because it was so quiet in the ballpark. The point of all this, Jeff, is we had a Caleb pitchers of record the other day. Caleb Thielbar, Caleb Ferguson were the pitchers of record in a major league game. So we didn't have a Caleb until 2014, and now we have Caleb versus Caleb in the pitchers of record. These are the things.
We've been waiting patiently for
Right.
that.
These
It's not like you had mentioned that Caleb is a rare name. It's not like Braxton or something. Right. It's not that out there. We've had Caleb's around.
Jeff, just go look at the pitchers, the pitchers of record every day, and just go look at the names that we see today. They're the most bizarre names ever. It's just tremendous.
Are you sure you're able to judge with a last name like what we have?
Well, first name, last names are different. First names, first names are a little bit different. We had a guy named Lyon pitch the other night, Lyon Richardson, and we had a guy named Lake pitch the other night, and they're their first names, so that's great.
Dad, what do you have on this date in baseball history?
Okay, 1992, Butch Henry, a pitcher for the Astros, got his first major league hit, and it was a home run, a 3-run homer, and it was an inside the park home run. So here, a pitcher gets his first hit. It's not just a homer, it's an inside the park home run. And of course, it's the only home run that he ever hit in his major league career, and it was an inside the parker. And I hope I'm right about this. I don't think Rickey Henderson ever hit an inside the park home run. And he hit almost 300 homers in his career. He's the greatest base stealer of all time. And he never hit an inside the park homer. But Butch Henry did as a pitcher.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ichiro never hit an inside the park home run.
Except in the All-Star game.
Exactly. I was going to say, that was
Jeff,
my little fun
did you
fact.
have that? Did I interrupt and take a good note out of your pocket?
I did have that. That's okay. But you know who has hit an inside the park home run? Ichiro hasn't in a regular season game, but Prince Fielder did.
How did you know that? Jeff, you are now completing my sentences. I have corrupted you so badly. You're starting to think like me. That's not good, Jeff.
Well, when JT Realmuto hit an inside the park home run during the playoffs a couple years back, I got very curious about inside the park home runs, and that's when I started kind of diving down the rabbit hole to see those facts. So there we go.
Way to go, Jeff. I'm really proud of you. And the other thing was, I've never actually followed up on this story, but in 1950, Lloyd Allen, a pitcher, was born. So Bobby Valentine told me once that his best friend, Bill Buckner, whose name has come up twice now in this podcast, Bill Buckner was always resentful that Lloyd Allen got picked ahead of him in the draft. So Bobby and Buck are best friends, and they're playing in a minor league game, and Lloyd Allen is pitching. And boy, I hope I've got this right. Bobby told me, so I'm just quoting him. I never called Lloyd Allen, and I never asked Bill Buckner about it, but I trust Bobby. Bobby said that Bill Buckner said, I'm going to hit a line drive off this guy's head because I'm so mad that he got picked ahead of me. And then he hit a line drive and hit Lloyd Allen right in the head. Now, Lloyd Allen was fine, so we're not trying to make fun or poke fun at somebody's injury. We never do that. But that's what Bobby Valentine told me about Lloyd Allen and Bill Buckner. So every time I see Lloyd Allen's name, that's the story I think of. He was born on this date in 1950.
And coming up next on Is This a Great Game or What? Dad, you're going to give us number 13 and number 14, the best players to wear those numbers from Ozzy to Oral. We're also going to go into the best of all Tim. So our Brewers fans out there are going to hear who my dad thinks is the greatest brewer of all time. A special I Am a Seamhead. And then Team Tim versus Team Jeff. More of that coming up next on Is This a Great Game or What? Welcome back to Is This a Great Game or What? Let's dive right in from Ozzy to Oral, the best players to wear each number. We start at number 13 today.
Right. Now, this was not easy. I picked Alex Rodriguez, who started his career wearing number 3. He was a better player at 3 than he was at 13, but he was pretty darn good at 13. Won 2 MVPs in the 12 years that he wore number 13. So, hesitantly, I am choosing him above Omar Vizquel, Dave Concepcion, and Manny Machado, who I think at this time next year I'm going to have to replace because he will then have played 15 years in the league wearing number 13. So, but I'm going with Alex Rodriguez now. He was a great player. Let's forget all the other stuff he did. But Jeff, when I went to England a couple of years ago to cover the game in England, Michael Kay is doing the play-by-play, and Alex Rodriguez is the color guy, and I'm the dugout reporter. So one of my jobs the day before the game was to do the man about town kind of thing, and this is probably the best moment I ever had with Alex Rodriguez, all right? So I'm interviewing people on the street, and I ask them, I have to ask questions like, have you ever heard of Alex Rodriguez? And like all the people in England, like first 10 people have never heard of Alex Rodriguez. So I get to the 10th person. I say, have you ever heard of Alex Rodriguez? And he looks at me and goes, of course I have. Everyone knows who Alex Rodriguez is, gives his whole background, and he goes, started his career with the Oakland A's, which of course he didn't do, but this guy was so certain. So when I told this story on the air to Michael Kay and Alex Rodriguez, that is the most genuine laugh I've ever gotten from A-Rod, that this guy on the street in London thought he started his career with the A's. It was just beautiful.
That is incredible. That's your number 13. Number 14, the best player to wear that number. Who do you got?
Wow, this isn't even close. It's Pete Rose, 4,256 hits, Jeff. Just I know this is a cliche now. If he played 20 years, got 200 hits a year, he would still be 256 hits short of what he finished with. He played 24 years, more at bats, more plate appearances than anyone in Major League history, won the Rookie of the Year, won an MVP. And, you could say what you like about Pete, but there's never been anybody quite like Pete. So in the mid 80s, I'm working for the Dallas Morning News right around the corner from where you are right now. And Pete comes in for a baseball card show, and I go to interview him because Pete Rose is in our town. So I'm with him for like 30 seconds, and I sit down, explain who I am and what I'm doing. And he looks at me and he goes, I bet you didn't know that I played in more winning games than Joe DiMaggio played in games. He had looked that up on his own. Now, again, wow. DiMaggio played 13 years. Pete Rose played 24. But still, that was the stat he came up with. And I'm going to tell this story again, Jeff. But the only story you need to know about Pete Rose is that he went to prison for tax evasion, was in prison for 4 months. He comes out. He's 47 years old. His son, Pete Jr., comes to pick him up at the prison. And he says to Pete Jr., first thing he says when he gets out of prison, he says, is there a batting cage near here? And his son goes, yeah, there's one right down the street. So they go to the batting cage. Pete goes to the proprietor and says, what's the fastest machine you have here? And he goes, right there, 85 miles an hour. So Pete gets in the cage. At this point, everyone at the batting cage recognizes the hit king is in the batting cage. So, 47 years old, incarcerated for 4 months. First thing he does is go to batting cage. First pitch at 85 comes in, and he whistles a line drive right back at the pitching machine. Absolute textbook swing. He looks at all the people gathered around the batting cage. He takes his bat, throws it to the ground, says some things never effing change, and then he walks away. So
amazing.
That's all you need to know about Pete Rose is that's what he could do even at age 47.
Every single Thursday, we do the best of all, Tim. We stop at each organization, and Dad, you give us the best player to play for that team. And today, the Milwaukee Brewers.
Right. So the Brewers, the greatest player, and I'm not sure there's a question about this with all due respect to Paul Molitor, who was so great, but Robin Yount spent his entire 20-year career with the Brewers. Jeff, he was an everyday shortstop in the big leagues at age 18. You could barely tie your shoes when you were 18. He was a big league shortstop. He won 2 MVPs, one as a shortstop, one as a center fielder, had 3,000 hits. He's one of the great players that I was ever around. And Jeff, I'll never forget Dan Plesac, who's a very funny guy, but a really good guy, teammate of Robin Yount once, and he told me this story. He says, before a game, Robin Yount has a bruise on his leg that is the most hideous thing he's ever seen. Dan Plesac tells me. And he says, well, there's no way Robin is playing tonight. So he sees the lineup card, and Robin Yount is in there. And Dan Plesac, during infield, or in this case, shagging balls in the outfield, says to Robin Yount, why are you playing today? You are too injured to play. And Robin Yount looks at Dan Plesac and says, when you were a kid, did you ever fake an illness so you got to stay home from school? And Dan Plesac goes, yeah, I used to do that all the time. And Robin Yount said, you remember how much easier it was the second time after you did it correctly the first time? And Dan Plesac goes, yeah, it was a lot easier to fake it the second time. So Robin Yount looked at him and said, don't ever do it the first time. So that is a great reminder of the durability that it takes to play in the big leagues and the discipline it takes to play in the big leagues. So never, ever forget what a gamer on every level Robin Yount was.
Dad, I am a Seamhead. We do this every single week, every Thursday, where we bring somebody who claims to be a Seamhead. And you can send us your audio portions. You can email me, jeff@greatgameorwhat.com. Just a voice memo. End it with your name and I am a Seamhead. And I'm excited to bring in friend of the show, Susie Hunter. She's the Rockies reporter for Guerrilla Sports. You can follow her, and she has her own podcast, but you can follow her as well for all her baseball coverage at the Susie Hunter on all platforms, Dad. Our first female Seamhead, and she's got quite a story to tell. Let's listen.
Baseball is by far my favorite sport because it has a chaos factor that other sports just can't give you. It's the ballpark. It's the ultimate cathedral of sports, but literally every field of play across the game is different. You hit a ball one way and it's an out, and another ballpark it's a home run. I'm so obsessed with the concept of the ballpark that in the summer of 2021, I drove to all of them. Legit, one season, all 30 ballparks. Seeing them all back to back to back was surreal because they're really all a world of their own. And after seeing all of them, I ended up staying in Colorado. That high elevation air, it sends the ball flying, it disrupts pitches, it knocks the wind out of anyone running the bases. Every game at Coors Field is a chance to see one of the weirdest games of your life. And that's baseball. Even when you think you know what to expect, the game gives us so much unpredictability. My name is Susie Hunter, and I'm a Seamhead.
every single Major League Baseball stadium, Dad. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it's really great, Jeff. And she's not the only female Seamhead. I've met a bunch of them, and it's so good to see. I told you I was at the Safeway a few years ago, and one of the housewives from the neighborhood came up to me and like tackled me in the frozen food aisle and said, "Oh my gosh, it's you." She said, "I love the Nationals." She's 55 years old. She says, "I love the Nationals. I can't do anything now but watch the game. I never miss a pitch. I finally got it." She said, "I love it. I can't miss anything." And then she looks at me and she goes, "This is how you felt your whole life, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, this is it." Not the point. The point is, I love what Susie has done here. And I did a speech in Cincinnati at Moeller High School in January, and I met a fellow who had been to 167 stadiums in his minor leagues, of course. And he said he's the kind of guy that he and his buddy will see that there's an independent league stadium opening, 6 hours away, and they just jump in their car and go see it. Susie's absolutely right. The beauty of all of this, Jeff, is every stadium is different.
Right.
Every ballpark plays differently, and that's the difference between the NBA and the NFL. I mean, you don't have to go to all the NBA arenas to get the character, because all the arena floors and all the NFL fields are the same size. They have to be. But the beauty of baseball is walking around in a new stadium and looking for all the nooks and crannies and all the odd little things there. So, Susie, we love you. And to anyone who wants to send in a Seamhead, believe me, we need you more than you need us. We need help on this, because I know there are a zillion Seamheads out there. Just send something to Jeff and we'll get it on the air.
Dad, I love this. Email me, jeff@greatgamerwhat.com. Susie, thank you again for being a part of it. Dad, we're bringing back our Strat Sims for this week, because last week on our Thursday episode, I kind of out of nowhere said, well, we got to do a best of all Team Tim, and best of all Team Jeff. So, Dad, you and I put together our own teams. First name Tim for your team, first name Jeff or Jeffrey for my team. Dad, do you want to go through your team?
Yes.
Tim.
I'm going to do this quickly because we don't have all day. My catcher is Tim McCarver. I had trouble at first base. Tim Corcoran's my first baseman. Tim Tuffle at second. Tim Wallach at third. He was a really good player. Tim Anderson, former batting champion, at shortstop. Hall of Famer Tim Raines in the outfield. Tim Salmon, who also went to Grand Canyon University.
That's right. GCU. Two mentions for the Lopes Up.
Right. Lopes Up. XU. Tim LeCastro is one of my outfielders. I just love him. He's gets hit by a pitch more than anyone. We miss him in the big leagues at the moment. Tim Keefe, Hall of Famer from the 1800s, is my first pitcher. I've got Tim Hudson. By the way, Jeff, Tim Hudson, the first two 18-inning games in the history of the postseason. The first two, the only two, were both started by Tim Hudson. Think about that. How could that happen? Tim Lincecum, pretty darn good third starter for my team. Tim Wakefield, the late Tim Wakefield, started more games for the Red Sox than any starting pitcher in the history of the franchise. That's unbelievable. Wow. And Tim Belcher, who I covered for a long time. My bullpen, not as good. Tim Stoddard. Tim Herron, now with the Guardians, really good. Tim Burke pitched for the Expos, had a very odd delivery. That's my team, Tim.
I'm going to take you through Team Jeff, and then we're going to go into the Strat Sim of who would win with their team in a 7-game series. So my catcher is Jeff Mathis.
Right.
Jeff Bagwell, Hall of Famer at first. Jeff Kent is my second baseman. Third base is Jeff Cirillo. Shortstop is Jeff Blauser. Jeff Burrows in the outfield. Jeff Francoeur, former guest of the show. Had to put him in my outfield, of course. And Jeff Conine, also an outfield. Jeff Leonard is my designated hitter.
He went as Jeffrey Leonard, but we're going to give you Jeff Leonard. He was famous as Jeffrey Leonard, but he was a really good player, and he's on your team. Good call, Jeff.
I thought you weren't going to catch
that.
I was gonna That's why I said at the beginning.
No,
all
Jeff,
Tims.
Jeffrey, yes, it's all good.
Jeff Weaver is my first starting pitcher. And then we have Jeff Samardzija,
right?
Also a starting pitcher for me. Jeff Francis, Jeff Reardon, Jeff Brantley in my pen. And Are we ready for the results, Dad?
Yeah, the smile on your face is telling everything. I thought these teams were pretty well matched, pretty evenly matched, and I thought I had a chance to win based on the strength of my starting pitching. What do you got?
So our friends at Stratomatic, they are the market leader in sports simulations. They have taken these two teams and they have put them against each other in a 7-game series. And he says, which team is better, Tim or Jeff? And this is ultimately what happened, Dad. In 6 games, Team Tim is victorious.
I told you, Jeff, you challenged the master on these stupid Team Tim lists and you lost. Now, what do you have to say to your dad?
I'm sorry.
All right. Who was my star? Tim Raines? Who?
Tim McCarver batted 400 in the 6-game series with 2 home runs, 3 RBIs. Tim Anderson, 6 RBIs over the series. And your late addition, Tim Corcoran, you did have a different first baseman.
Right. I had Tim Tolman. I had a couple others, and I changed to Tim Corcoran at the last minute.
364, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. A great addition to the team. I don't think you're winning that game. I don't think you're winning the series
without Tim Corcoran and a last-minute change. How about that?
Tim Keefe, your starting pitcher, won both of the games with a 4.96 ERA. On my side, Jeff Burrows.
Former MVP, by the way, of the American League.
Batted 389. Jeff Kent, 2 home runs in the series, 7 RBIs, batted 304. And, we had Jeff Brantley, 11 and a third innings pitch, only gave up 3 hits, 0 runs in 5 games.
Right.
So Jeff Brantley out of my pen really locked it down, but it doesn't seem like I was able. Every game, Dad, was very, very close, but ultimately you did pull out the series win.
All right. So Jeff Brantley was my teammate at ESPN for a long time. Loved working with the Cowboy. He now does play-by-play and color on Reds games, and he's tremendous. Grew up, Jeff, as a big baseball player, but he also loved broadcasters, Mel Allen, and he's become a really good broadcaster. So again, years ago, I don't know where we were, but we were on a big postseason trip, and all the PAs from ESPN were there, and Jeff Brantley's taken all the young people out for a night on the town because he's a former player and he's the most generous man in the world. So about halfway through the night, he looks at all the assembled PAs and says, I need to borrow $3,000 from you guys. Because they're gambling. So they like say, we don't have it or whatever. So somehow he scrounges up $3,000 and then goes to like a casino and wins like $10,000. This is so classic Jeff Brantley, the ultimate cowboy, the ultimate gambler, one of my all-time favorite people, and a really good addition to the all Jeff team. I'm sorry that my team won, Jeff, but that starting pitching was pretty good.
It was pretty good, and that was where it locked down. Dad, that is today's episode. We'll be back with you next week with 3 new episodes, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Our guest for next week on the Wednesday episode will be Steve Russian, friend of the show, and I think one of the greatest architects of the English language. Would you agree?
Look, Jeff, I tend to exaggerate. I'm not exaggerating here. He's the greatest writer of all time. He is at least my favorite writer of all time. He is maybe the smartest and the funniest person I've ever met in my life. At the same time, how many people can you say that about? I don't think very many. Steve Russian will be our guest, and we're going to keep him for an hour. I texted him yesterday about joining, and he goes, great. He says total nonsense and a million laughs. That's what it's going to be like with Steve Russian. Total nonsense and a million laughs.
Oh, hold on. I just got an email. Oh, it looks like Stephen King has canceled due to your comments about Steve Russian being the greatest writer of all time. So Stephen King no longer an option as a guest, Dad. Sorry. I'm just messing with you, Dad.
I know you're messing with me, Jeff. Look, I'm sorry. All due respect. Steve Russian is a better writer than Stephen King. Sorry. Steve Russian's a better writer than anyone.
It's true. It's true. Well, Dad, I'm excited. I'm going to wrap up things here in Dallas. The ACMs are on Thursday night, which is really cool, on Amazon Prime. So I'm going to be chatting with all the artists, and it's going to be a great time. Dad, I'll see you next week.
All right, see you next week. Ride that mechanical bull before you come home. Otherwise, don't bother coming home, all right?
You got it.
All right.
Thank you for listening, and as always, thank you for being a part of our family.